All right, so welcome everybody. Thanks so much for coming, especially to our presenters. And I'm sure most of you know me. I'm Margie Rohrback, and I'm the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Broward County. So as a reminder that the League is a nonpartisan organization, and as such, we don't support or oppose candidates or parties, but we do advocate for policies that we have studied and feel are beneficial to the community. And I also want to point out that if you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat. And then at the end of the two presentations, we'll have a time for a question and answer. Remember that the event will be recorded and will be posted on the League's YouTube channel. And so after it's uploaded to the YouTube channel, I'll send everybody who's registered a link to that, and then you can enjoy it all over again as much as you want. One announcement, the next League event is going to be August 26th, which is Women's Equality Day. That's the day that the 19th Amendment became the law. However, this year we're calling it Women's Inequality Day celebration. And we're going to have an event at the Northwest Regional Library. And I'm sure you will enjoy it. And you can register at the League's calendar page. That's lwvbroward.org/calendar. And we are co-hosting that with the Palm Beach League. So, and we're going to have some really exciting stuff going on there. So I hope you'll join us to that. So I'd like to introduce our two guest speakers. We're very honored today to have Representative Marie Woodson of District 105, who's going to give us some insight into these two immigration bills, and also Otto Valenzuela of Children of Immigrant Families Coalition, who will explain the facts about SB 1718. So we'll start with Mr. Valenzuela's presentation. So let me, oh, wait a minute. I gotta share my screen. And there it is. And there we go. And I've got to show it. Go to the show mode. How come it's not showing? There it goes. All right, can everybody see that? Okay. We're good?
That looks good.
Okay. All righty. So, Mr. Valenzuela, take it away.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. My name is Otto Valenzuela. I am, during my day job, I am Associate Director of Public Policy and Advocacy at Hispanic Unity of Florida. You may have heard about us. We're a nonprofit organization located in Hollywood, and we are the largest immigrant serving nonprofit in Broward. Hispanic Unity of Florida is one of the founding members of the Children of Immigrant Families Coalition of Florida. This group began almost a decade ago after there was an incident with an immigrant family in Broward County Public Schools, and the community rallied together to support this family. And since then, it's been a group of fantastic individuals, not including myself, but fantastic individuals working and speaking on issues that affect immigrants, not only in Broward, but across Florida. And thank you very much to the League, to Margie, to Monica for this invitation tonight to speak to you all about Florida's new immigration law, SB 1718, as it's known. It's impacting so many people in not just Broward, but across Florida, individuals who not only already live in the shadows, but they are being pushed further into the shadows. So we appreciate the opportunity to bring this new law to your attention. Next slide, please.
Okay, if I can figure out how to make it go to the next slide. Okay, oh, there it goes. Okay.
There it is. Thank you. So what is this all about? It's House Bill 1617, Senate Bill 1718 that was proposed in our last legislative session, that and the law came into effect on July 1st of this year. It's the most sweeping immigrant law in recent memory. It's important to note that there's a lot of confusion and misinformation around this in the community. because earlier versions of this law, when it was still making its way through committee, it was a lot more harmful to some communities than what ended up actually becoming law, but that really stuck with individuals. We have noticed that a lot of the confusion, misinformation comes from those previous versions, thanks to the advocacy work of many groups across Florida and also many representatives in Tallahassee. They was able to be watered down a bit, but still a lot of harmful provisions to some in our community remained. It passed in the 2023 regular session that was signed into law by our governor, and as I said, came into effect on July 1st. The law itself is about, it's 20 sections covering a dozen plus policy areas. Tonight, for the sake of time, we're going to go over the 5 biggest areas that we see cause confusion in individuals. That's what we're going to be covering tonight. Next slide, please. These are the 21 sections of the law. As you see, it's pretty wide ranging, everything from hospitals, work and E-Verify, attorney licensing, racketeering, counterterrorism, DNA, unauthorized alien transport. It's pretty wide ranging what this law covers. But tonight, next slide, please. We'll be taking a look at these key sections of the law: community IDs, out-of-state driver's license, hospital data collection, E-Verify, which impacts small, medium-sized businesses and large businesses, actually, human smuggling. Next slide. Before I get started on this, the way we've set this up, we are showing what the law does and what the law does not do. We see this helps ease the confusion a bit. When we show what the law actually does, we see that the penalties within the law actually don't fall on the individuals and groups that one may think they would fall under. So I ask that you pay attention to what it does and does not do. That's what I ask the community to see that where the impact falls. So local funding of communities, first off, there are 4 counties currently in Florida: Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, and Alachua County, that have what's called a community ID. The requirements are less stringent than what you may need to have a Florida identification card or a driver's license when you go to the DMV here in Florida. At least in Broward, the program is run by the Legal Aid of Broward. The requirement is you be a Broward County resident and you have proof of identity. So this helps many groups of individuals, homeless individuals returning to society from incarceration, the LGBTQ plus community, victims of domestic violence, and immigrants, just some of the groups that benefit from having an ID that otherwise may be more difficult or impossible if they were to go to the DMV. Next slide, please. So what does the law do? What the law says, it prevents counties and cities from funding community identification cards to someone who does not have or provides proof of lawful residence in the United States. How does this impact Broward County? The Broward County Community ID was established by the Broward County Commission in 2021. And the Broward County Commission has provided funding that is no longer allowed under this law. Next slide. But what does the law not do? It does not invalidate any of the current IDs issued by Legal Aid of Broward County, nor any future IDs. That program continues. That program serves community members Monday through Friday at the Legal Aid office in Plantation. All of those IDs issued are still valid. Individuals who hold those have no fear that they have lost their validity. Nothing changes here, and it also doesn't prevent counties from creating a community ID program. There are some counties in Central and West Florida that are thinking about starting these programs. That continues. No one, if you know of someone who needs a Broward County Community ID, they should reach out to Legal Aid of Broward, because those community IDs are continue to be issued and do not lose validity. Next slide. Out-of-state driver's license. There are currently 19 states that issue driver's license to undocumented individuals. Next slide. As I see here, 19 states, Puerto Rico, Washington, D.C., issue driver's license to undocumented individuals. The punishment, what the law does is you cannot drive without a driver's license. In Florida, that does not change from certain states. And the last I checked, it's only 2 states that have their driver's license invalidated. So if an individual has one of these driver's license that was issued to an undocumented individual and they are stopped by law enforcement in Florida, that person would be issued a citation as not having a valid driver's license. Next slide. What the law does not do, it doesn't prevent an undocumented immigrant from receiving a driver's license from one of these 19 states and territories. They may still go to these states. Some of them are Washington State, Connecticut, New York, some of the states that issue them, but it does, and the law in Florida does not invalidate those driver's license by no means. Next slide. Hospital data collection. This is one provision that it's quite worrisome. Individuals are foregoing healthcare because of fear of either law enforcement being alerted to their immigration status or being denied care because of their immigration status. Next slide. What does the law do? It impacts hospitals in Florida that accept Medicaid. In Broward County, that is both Broward Health and Memorial Healthcare System. In Miami-Dade County, it's Jackson Memorial. Those hospitals must include an immigration status question on the intake form, usually at the emergency room. A quarterly report will be submitted to the state with ER visits or hospital admissions by immigration status, plus the total care, the total cost of care broken down by immigration status. This will be reported by hospitals to the state. Next slide. What the law does not do, it does not impact free clinics, primary care providers, medical specialists, and this is something we really hit on is pediatricians. Parents should not stop taking their children to the pediatrician because of any fear of being asked their immigration status. Only hospitals that accept Medicaid fall under this law. No one can be refused care because of their immigration status. The law does not address that by no means. It does not require patients to answer the immigration status. Anyone can decline to answer this. So when an American citizen, a US citizen, goes to one of these hospitals, they will most likely see this question on their intake form. That person can choose to forego answering that question, just like any individual. That question is optional. And as of now, it does not include any personally identifiable information. It's only aggregate data that is supposed to be reported to the state. So this is a very big one. No one should not go to the hospital in a life when someone's life is in danger because of fear of being turned away or being turned over to law enforcement. Next slide. E-Verify. E-Verify is the federal program that validates individuals' status to be able to work legally in the United States. This is a federal program. Next slide. What the law does now in the state of Florida, it requires all employers with 25 or more individuals to use the federal E-Verify system to verify the status of individuals. The penalty for not using this system falls on the businesses. And there are several penalties depending on the first time, second time offenders, but this falls on the business or the employer who does not use E-Verify. Next slide. What doesn't the law do? Doesn't impact employees hired before July 1st of this year for temporary positions. Doesn't impact private businesses with 24 fewer employees or staffing companies. I think the big one here is individuals who do not have who do not have a work permit permission to work legally in the United States. I think there's confusion here on this law now very much so cracking down on that practice. Unfortunately, someone who does not have a legal work permit in the United States, they can't work. This really doesn't alter that landscape for undocumented individuals. This really clamps down on employers who employ individuals and don't use the E-Verify system. The penalty falls on the employer. Next slide. And human smuggling, the last of the 5 sections that we'll be going through. This is one provision that caused a lot of confusion in the very first versions of the proposed law. There was mention of not being able to transport an undocumented individual within the state of Florida. This caused a lot of confusion and fear for individuals with family members or even Uber or Lyft drivers. Would they have to verify immigration status? That did not turn out to be the case, but that really stuck with individuals. There was also a provision on housing or providing housing, shelter to an undocumented individual. That also did not make it into the final bill, but it did stick with people. Next slide. What the bill does say, or what the law now does say, it subjects anyone who transports someone into the state of Florida, who they knew or should have known was undocumented, to felony charges. So this really applies to individuals who are brought into the state of Florida, mostly from our neighbors, Georgia and Alabama. And the penalty here falls to the person who's doing the transporting. So the driver would be the person facing the felony under this new law. Next slide. And what doesn't the law do? It does not ban transporting undocumented immigrants within the state, like I said before. School, work, errands, just people living their daily lives. At least under this law, there is no threat to someone moving around within the state of Florida in their day-to-day lives, either catching a ride or even being on public transportation. There is no threat to that individual. It also doesn't ban housing or living with an undocumented individual, and that includes living with a family member or renting to an individual who is undocumented. Next slide. I know we're going to have a Q&A section at the very end, so we can hold questions then, but I know that was a lot of information. Certainly willing to answer questions. One last piece that I need to address as well. We've been hearing a lot from parents and also from teachers at Broward County Public Schools. There's a lot of concern over what is going to happen to my children who go to Broward County Public Schools because of my immigration status or their immigration status. As you saw, the law does not address anything that concerns public education of a student. Parents should not have that fear that either their children will be taken out of a classroom or denied access to public education because of a parent or a child's immigration status. Parents should not have that fear. Students should not have that fear of going to school. Again, it's not addressed anywhere in this law, but we do know that's a concern out in the community. It's not a teacher's fault either for not knowing the answer, but that is just very concerning to hear. But every child in the United States, not just in Florida, has the right to public education, regardless of their immigration status or their parents' immigration status as well. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. I turn it back to Margie.
All right. Thank you. Let me see. I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. Thanks so much, Otto. And I have to say that now I'm really confused about the law because I read so many other things in the paper and online about some of the things you mentioned that I don't know how the immigrants are dealing with that, so.
Hmm.
At the end, I guess we can ask those questions, so. Everybody, don't forget you could put your questions in the chat and then we'll take them one by one, or you can raise your hands at the end, so. Okay, so now Representative Woodson, if you would help us understand a little more about SB 1718 and your experiences maybe in the legislature with it, or what you think, how is it impacting your constituents or across Broward County, especially in immigrant communities? And also, I know you're going to explain to us SB 264, which is the other very controversial immigration law. So.
Thank you very much, Margie. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you this evening in order for us to talk about such important topics. Two really bills that have really impacted our community in so many ways. And Mr. Valenzuela did a good job, laying out the details of the bills. This bill was disturbing to me from day one, from the first day that they brought this bill to us in the legislature. And as an immigrant myself from Haiti, one thing that I tell people, I don't get here and try to shut the door behind me. Yes, this is the United States of America. We have laws. We have to respect the laws. But my take on this bill is the fact that and what I mean by no administration have done a great job at securing the borders, at putting a pathway and for people to become citizens in the United States. So we have not done a good job at that. In the meantime, we're coming out with this bill that will impact immigrants in so many ways. And when you look at the immigrants, they are fleeing all kind of persecution, rape, all kind of atrocities that they're leaving behind. No one would want to take this journey unless you really have to. So to me, the bill is inhuman. And as a legislator, I took offense for this bill because it was so many of us who are sitting in the chamber. We are immigrants ourselves, and we are coming up with such a bad bill, really, that would hurt our community, that would hurt our people. And another thing, sometimes when we're coming up with those bills, we don't realize the impact that it's gonna have, not only just on the immigrants, but on other people as well who are living in the United States. Our farm workers, a majority of those immigrants who work on the farm, they're the one who put food on our table. It is estimated that we have approximately 300,000 farm workers in the state of Florida. Now, they take those jobs that a lot of other people won't take. They are putting food on our tables. I have gone to some grocery stores and they cannot find workers because a lot of them are fleeing town. They are leaving because they do not feel secure and being in the state of Florida. And another issue, I have spoken to people where they told me, even if they are sick, they will not go to a hospital because of the questions that they are going to ask them. And I'm educating people to say that question is optional. You don't have to answer it. But people are still in fear because they have been lied to before. We saw on the news a group of immigrants that were told that they were going to take them to New York for jobs and so forth and so on. And they ended up on Martha Vineyards, where they were fending for themselves. So people do not trust the law. They do not trust the system. The immigrants, they do not trust the system that is in place because they know, even though we're saying this question is optional, it might come back to hurt them. So I'm finding a lot of people, for example, I met a woman who told me her kids were sick, but she was afraid to take her kids to the hospital. How inhuman can that be, where you need care and you don't feel comfortable going to access care that you need for your child? And I had to talk to her to explain it to her, but she still was reluctant to go. And one thing we don't understand, when someone is sick, let's just say if they're sick, they cannot go to the hospital. If they have a communicable disease, everybody, they could pass it along to anybody else. So when we come in with those pieces of legislation, we don't think about the what can happen, not just to the person, but to everybody else. So to me, this bill is inhuman, and I'm finding so many people who are against the bill, even with the E-Verify system that you explained. If a company has 24 employees or more, by the third day, they have to use the system, and people know that the system is connected to immigration. It's connected to ICE. So they are afraid to go find a job. So we're seeing a lot of people leaving our state of Florida because of this bill. As a legislator, believe me, I'm not standing for a bill like that. I did not stand for it, and I did not vote. I voted against the bill because I don't think this bill is right. I don't think we are doing right by the people as a nation, as a United States of America. I think we can do better than that.
Okay, thank you. Can you explain to us the second bill, the SB 264, the
Right.
one about the people of the 5 different countries? And
The second bill that you mentioned, Senate Bill 264, that bill was not as extensive as the immigration bill. As you see, there are so many components to the immigration bill. It was not as extensive as the immigration bill, but that's a bill as well that was not needed. And when they come up with the bill, it was like they were trying to protect the country, trying to make sure that we don't have communist people coming to our country to buy land near certain facilities, what they call them critical infrastructure facilities. That's what was being said at the beginning. And one of my colleagues was a co-sponsor in the bill. And prior to us finding out the real details of the bill, we did not think the bill was that bad. After we dive into the bill, we realized that this bill was really keeping some people from living the American dream, such as like the Asian community, people from China. One thing that we have to be careful about, we cannot discriminate against any group to say they cannot buy bill, like putting them in a category where they don't belong. And this is what this bill is doing. We've taken certain group and we saying we are not going to allow them to buy, let's just say, a home, to live the American dream. How ruthless can we be to try to do that to a certain group while we don't know those people? We can't say everybody's a communist. We cannot say that. Just because they belong to a certain group does not make them a communist. And this is what really was in the bill. So a lot of us, we had to have several meetings about this bill because to us, the other side, the intent of the bill for them was like protecting our country from having communist people from communist country from buying a home close to our base. But that's not what the bill does. The bill really was keeping certain people from living the American dream, from buying land or property near certain locations. There are other ways to do that. We can put better measures in place in order to identify people who are communists. If we want to do that, we should have done our homework better, put more measures in place, and then you can say if somebody's a communist, they cannot come in and buy property or buy land. So this is not a bill that I supported. This is not a bill that a lot of my colleagues have supported either. And I think we need to do better instead of coming up with those bills that can impact people in such a negative way. We need to look at them before we put them on the table. There was an amendment that came at the end that made the bill a little bit better, but still it's not what we would want to see because it still keeps certain group from owning a home, from buying certain properties near certain facilities. So basically that's what was in this bill. And I think a lot of those bills, I would like to see those bills reversed, just like the immigration bill that we talked about, just like the Senate bill that we also talked about. We have better things to do. We have an insurance crisis that we are dealing with in the state of Florida. I would rather see us focusing on those things to bring relief to the resident of the state of Florida. We have a housing crisis where we're seeing people cannot afford to buy a home no matter how hard they work. We have the new generation the youngest generation who cannot afford to buy the first home. I'm pretty sure your insurance have gone sky high just like everybody else. So why are we not focusing on those things that are relevant to our resident of the state of Florida? Instead, we're focusing on bringing bills that will impact people in a negative way. So Senate Bill 90 was not 264. I'm sorry, I said 90. This is not a bill that was needed. We just, in looking at the bill, is discriminate against certain group. And this is not the message that we want to send to anyone. We want everybody to be living the American dream. So I would like to see those bills reversed. That's what I would like to see. But we have a lot of work to do in order to do this.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of questions. Katie asked Representative Woodson, was there any economic impact study presented to the legislators on HB 1617? Do you know what the economic impact of these bills will be, especially to our agricultural sector?
1718, right? The immigration bill.
Yeah, that right.
Okay. By the way, Katie, it's nice seeing you as well. We go way back. I was a member of the League of Women Voters. I'm still a member. And we have done some work together. So it's great seeing you and seeing everybody else. The economic impact, I will talk about one thing that the bill, the immigration 1718 does. The bill allocates $12 million for transporting migrants out of state. $12 million. Do you know how much $12 million can do right now for our community?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much that can be to give people relief? We passed a bill as a result of what happened in Surfside, which I understand is safety. We passed a bill where we are requiring now our seniors who live in certain buildings to have reserve funding. I have met with so many seniors who cannot afford to pay this money, and they have a deadline to come up with this money. Insurance is one, reserve is another one. So when we have $12 million, we taken out of our budget, out of taxpayers' funding to allocate this to transport migrants from our state to other states. That's an economic impact. That's money that you're taking from services that could have been rendered to the resident of Florida and using it for nonsense. So right then and there, that's a big economic impact because that's money that we could use to do other things that we are using, which is one. We were not presented with any other economic impact, but when you look at it, this is going to have a major economic impact in our state of Florida because those workers are not here. So business gonna take a big hit because if they can, small businesses make up a large portion of our GDP in the state of Florida. Those small businesses, they keep our economy flowing. And if they cannot find the people to work in them, especially the farm workers, the hotels, the hospital, our immigrants, they take the job that a lot of people don't want to do. And that keeps our economy flowing. So the impact that those bills would have on our economy cannot even be, you can't even put a number on it. To me, those bills will really impact our economy in a negative way. But no, we were not presented with the fiscal impact that the bill would have on our state.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question's from Denise Elliott. Mr. Valenzuela, it's for you. Can you please explain how the driver's license provision can be enforced? How would a law enforcement officer know that the person submitting a valid out-of-state license is undocumented?
So there is a way that law enforcement will be able to, but and before I jump into it, it's very interesting. On July 1st, when the law came into effect, the Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle Division put out their list of invalid driver's license. So of those 19 states plus 3 territories that issue driver's license to undocumented individuals, only 5 were on the state of Florida's list. I am not aware of what provisions they're using to select the states, but only 5 were. A few weeks later, it was down to 3, and currently, as of today, I'm looking at the list right now, there's 2 states that are on the list. So it's a fluid list for sure. And right now it's the state of Connecticut and Delaware. And I'll read right off of what the Florida DMV says here. Connecticut, the license has a quote DO for drive only listed in the state, and Delaware, it says driving privilege only, not valid for identification. So that is how law enforcement would be able to know the person's or at least conclude what the person's immigration status could be. And I see Adina asks, so does that mean only Connecticut licenses are invalid in Florida? Only Connecticut and Delaware as well on the list, who were issued to undocumented individuals who have those 2 provisions written on the actual identification card. So no worries to a US citizen from Connecticut or Delaware who's driving in the state of Florida.
Well, that's good to know.
And it's true. And I did receive a question from someone from Puerto Rico, and they asked me, my driver's license is from Puerto Rico. Do I now need to go to the DMV to get it like revalidated or something? I was like, no. As a US citizen, you are fine. It's certain driver's license with these certain provisions. And as you see, the list is very narrow, but it does cause confusion to anyone really.
Okay.
And
So-
that's what we do. We come up with those bills. They're very unclear. We don't give directions and everybody's confused. Some of those bills are so vague. Sometimes they presenting the bill and you ask questions and you cannot get the questions that you cannot get the response that you need. So this is what we're doing.
So Mr. Valenzuela, so in yesterday's paper, the article, big long article about 1718, and talking about the fear that's in the community, people afraid to drive their kids to school or to go to the hospital, as Representative Woodson was saying. But that's only if you're undocumented immigrant. So if you're an American citizen, you can drive people places. It made it sound like they couldn't even be driven around. But that's not the case. So I think you're right. There's so much misinformation and fear out there that people are operating, they don't even understand the law themselves.
That is correct. And I'll just add that the final law does say it's transporting individuals into the state. But there was a lot of questions on what does a tourist do, an international tourist as well, who wants to land in Miami, visit New York, and then come back into the state of Florida. Those individuals have permission from US Customs. They've been inspected to travel freely with a visa within the state as a tourist. What that does cause a lot of confusion to these individuals. There might be an unlikely but unfortunate scenario where a tourist is in Jacksonville, travels across the border through Georgia, comes back, they didn't have their passport with their visa, they are stopped at the border. Enforcement is also unclear how the state of Florida is going to do this. As of yet, there hasn't been any news of Florida Highway Patrol or anyone stationed at I-10 and I-95. So we don't know how enforcement is going to look. Also in airports as well, from flights from outside of Florida into Florida. So a lot of unknowns. And to your point, just confusion as of now. The state of Florida, we're still waiting and seeing how they could enforce, how could these laws be enforced. But something else we say, it is the law of the land. So we all need to abide by it. And certainly, if you are an individual who is breaking this law, certainly you must be aware that is the law of the state of Florida, and you're subject to enforcement at any moment.
Okay. I think Adina had another question for Representative Woodson. She said, where are the immigrants escorted to?
Yes, there's no specific place that they are being escorted to, But you know, they like they transported some at one time to New York. So that there's not defined place where they are being transported. The money is available for them to transport them anywhere that they want to. So there are no specific place where they are transporting them. We have seen them sending some to Martha's Vineyard at one time. But we don't know exactly where, but no other state can escort them back to Florida, but Florida is sending them wherever they see fit.
Okay, all right, so that was her other question. Can other states escort them back to Florida? So they can't?
That's not in the rules, no. They cannot escort them to Florida because Florida doesn't want them. Florida's sending them to other places. So we using people as ping pong balls. That's what we're doing, which is not human.
Okay. So I would say to both our presenters, are these laws, do you think like they're the strictest laws in the country regarding immigration? Or
I wouldn't say they the strict, well, this one is strict. I would say this law is strict. And I would have to study other laws in other part of the country to know if this one is stricter than other one. But what I would say, that's not a law that we need, especially in our state of Florida. That's not a law that was needed. Right now, we have other laws that we need to pass better than this one. I would say it's the stricter one,
okay.
But it is a bad law.
All right. Are there any other questions? Anybody? I don't see anybody with a hand up, or let me look at the gallery. Anybody? Okay.
Yeah.
And I know some people have issues with immigrants being here, and I respect that. But I'm asking, where's the humanity in us as well? Where's the humanity? See what people are going through. Nobody's coming here to go on vacation. Those people are not coming here on vacation. They are fleeing. No one wants to leave your country to come to a foreign place where you don't know the language or you don't know anything. No one wants to do that. But if they're here, let's treat them as human as possible. Because a lot of those people who are coming up with, they are immigrant themselves, or their wife or family members or something, they immigrant themselves. So would they want their own family members to be treated like that? No. And that's what I'm saying.
Katie has a question. Do you know of any legal challenges to SB 264 besides the Chinese community's lawsuit?
I understand that the bill is being challenged. I understand there are some legal steps that are being taken, but we don't know the full details yet. Both bills I understand are being challenged. So we don't know the details yet, but that remain to be seen. And I think they both need to be challenged.
So I know there are other countries besides China. Do you know what the other countries are that are mentioned in that bill? I know Cuba is one, Venezuela, Iran. I forget what the other ones are. Okay, and Katie also said, did any of the legislators' antenna go up, wondering how the state of Florida could decide which countries are to be treated as pariahs? Isn't that the State Department's jurisdiction? Were you aware of anything where they were trying to decide what countries to put on that list?
Well, we weren't privy to that conversation. All we know, the bill came out, and those countries were listed, but we weren't privy to that conversation because usually when a bill come out, the bill is not discussed with anybody. Let's just say I want to introduce a bill. Maybe the bill came from someone, maybe somebody else gave someone the bill to carry. So once you have your bills, whatever the details of the bill are not discussed with the legislators until it comes to the committee. So that's the process. So our antennas went up once the bill was introduced And then we had a chance to, when the bill was put out on the system and we had a chance to read the bill. And that's when we realized everything that was in the bill.
Mhm. I think North Korea was one. I mean, some of them, it was an obvious choice, you know, like North
Mhm.
Korea,
Mm-hmm.
that, so. Okay.
I believe
Um,
Gloria had her hand up.
Just like
oh,
immigration,
Gloria, I didn't see it.
just like
I'm sorry.
immigration. Immigration is a federal issue. Here we
Yeah.
are, getting into the federal jurisdiction and coming up with our own laws. So
Mhm.
we don't
I-
respect,
Okay, Gloria, you have a question, and then Adina.
It was more a comment than a question. And first of all, I
Okay.
was surprised by Otto's, the 5 things that they're not as bad as we thought. And why would they pass a law that just sounds really onerous? Other than to intimidate people, I think.
Mhm.
Control or something. It just seems just a lot of stuff about nothing. I mean, we do have problems in Florida. We do have insurance problems. We do have global warming problems. We do have a lot of things that serious people should be addressing. And yet they come up with all these little details that in the end, one state or two, maybe they may look at as not having the right kind of driver's license. How petty is that? It's just, it's just mind-boggling, I guess. And I think there's just more of a purpose of it than just the law itself, and that is to, like the voters law. They don't, you know, they're scaring people from registering to vote. They're made the law, the amendment that was passed to let felons who had paid their dues vote. They made it so difficult that nobody knows if they've addressed all the issues or not. So it's more of an, and then they arrested those 20 or a dozen of them. It scared everybody else from voting. It's like they're trying to control people by intimidating them.
Sounds like
The
it.
way I look at it.
And I agree with you 100%. We are coming up with a lot of things we have no business voting in. Just like women's right. Now I had more rights than my daughter did. You see what I'm saying? So who am I as a legislator to come in and tell you what to do? And I'm talking about healthcare because that's your health. It should be between you, your husband, your doctor, or your mate. Who am I as a legislator to come in and tell you what you can do in a situation that you might be faced? We came up the union bill. Now, teachers, I always say God is first, my parents second, and teachers are third. That's the order for me.
That's what I think.
I would not be here, wasn't it for a good teacher who has had an influence on my life. And now, let me tell you something. I would go to bat for teachers, nurses, because I'm telling you, I respect every profession, but more so teachers. We came up with a bill to attack the teachers union, to negotiate for funding for them. We telling them if they don't keep a threshold of 60%, they have to go back to the state. They cannot get payroll deduction to pay the dues to the paycheck. Come on, people, come on. This is how petty we getting in our state, and that should not happen. Like I tell people, and this is not for me, it's not even a question of party. Yes, I'm a Democrat. I'll tell everybody. But guess what? To me, it's about the people, about respect, about treating people the way you want to be treated. And we are getting too petty. I agree with you 100%. When you're doing that to teachers, there's a problem. We need to pay teachers what they deserve. We're not paying them enough. They can't even afford to pay the rent or the mortgage right now. And every day I meet teachers, they can't because the money that they're making is not enough for them to take care of their families. They're taking money out of their own pocket to buy resources for the kids in the school system. And then we come in with petty laws like that? Come on. Elections have consequences. And it's, believe me, if people don't realize what's going on and get out there and vote, then I know you nonpartisan, and I'm not talking about party. I'm talking about doing what's right by the people of the state of Florida.
Yep, no, we agree. Adina did ask, did these bills all pass by large margins?
The total that we have in the state legislature, we have 35 Democrats and 85 Republicans. And yes, those bills are passed by large margins because you would find Democrats voting against the immigration bill. I don't believe there was any of us that voted for that bill. I don't believe so. None of the Democrats voted for the bill. So they passed by a large margin because you have 85 to 35. And that other bill, we did the Senate Bill 264. Yeah, that's that one. We had some Democrats who voted in favor of it, but it wasn't that many. So they both passed by a large margin.
Okay, I think Katie had another comment. Katie said, these sound like attacks on our vulnerable communities at the expense of working on real issues.
Yes.
And I don't know who TBI Sisterhood is, but she says, why aren't we spending money to provide more workers at the borders to process immigrants into the country legally rather than all the money to keep them out? Anybody have Otto, do you have a comment on that?
So this is where immigration policy in this country gets complicated because that's a question, a federal question. Washington and our federally elected officials need to take a look at that. But I will say there is currently a proposal in Congress from a member from the South Florida delegation that has some sort of fix to the broken immigration system. It has its pros and cons depending on what side you look at the issue, but it is a federal issue. And that's not something that the state of Florida can really wade into. And this leads me to the next point where and Rep. Woodson alluded to some of this. Well, a lot of what's in this law starts treading on federal mandates and laws, and now are subject to revision by courts if they are indeed taken to court. So to TBY Sisterhood, it's contact your member of Congress and ask them what their thought is and where you think money should be allocated. That is a federal issue.
Yes, which reminds me, the paper said yesterday that they have asked President Biden to expedite work permits for undocumented workers. So what does that mean, Otto? That how can he give work permits to undocumented workers in Florida?
The TPS.
Right. So, and it wouldn't be just in Florida, across the country. Perhaps there's certain individuals who may qualify for a work permit. Perhaps something that the only benefit they get is being able to legally work in this country. You would now be able to use the E-Verify system on that individual. Perhaps no other benefit. Certain individuals from certain countries. And perhaps with being advocated that an executive order or something would be given to a small group of immigrants across the country to be able to work and fill the work gap that currently exists in the country. But again, that is a federal issue and out of Florida's scope.
Well, that was a group called the American Business Immigration Coalition, who had some kind of like a convention or a meeting, and they put a petition out, and 200 employers and 70 organizations signed this petition that they sent to President Biden. So I guess it's businessmen have the need for these workers, and so they're petitioning the federal government to help them out. So I don't know. I see rough waters ahead, maybe, like they say in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
All right.
And my call to everyone, whenever there's something like that happened, and I know the League of Women Voters is very good at being involved, putting out messages and stuff, but my call to everyone, when there's something like that, more people need to stand up. Because just because someone is not an immigrant doesn't mean that this bill does not impact you. It impacts everybody in so many ways that people don't even realize it. Because if we don't have people to work those farms, food gonna be a lot more expensive, okay? Because it's gonna have to come from other parts of the country. If an immigrant is sick, they cannot go to the hospital. Guess what? They sick. Let's just say if they have something, you can catch it, I can catch it, everybody else can catch it. It's a lot of domino effect that you have in this bill. And not only that, we are all human. We are all human. A lot of us are immigrants, and we were fortunate, some people, they came from other countries, their parents came from other countries, they were able to be here, but there's some humanity that people need to realize. When something like that happens, don't hide, don't sit. If they're having something, participate. Come out, because we all need to stand for each other. Just like the women's healthcare, and they call it abortion bill. I'm not telling anyone to have an abortion. I'm a mother of two, but I'm saying if you are faced with the situation, you need to be able to make that decision for yourself. No one should be butting into your business and tell you what to do. But when things like that happen, people need to stand up a lot more. They had a bill, I think it was the choice, was it the choice bill? One of those bills. I saw so many people coming on the other side, but on one side, you didn't see anybody come in to support the bill. I think we need to show when we're dissatisfied with something or when we don't agree with something, we need to stand up. But you can only make a difference if we stand in numbers. That's
Yes.
it. So just because someone is not an immigrant does not mean you cannot stand up for the immigrants. Because I stand up for everybody, not just the immigration bill. If it's something that I know would impact you, would impact our community, would impact someone, I stand for it. I do what I have to do. I contribute however I can contribute. So I'm going to stop right now. I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to put that in there. I just wanted to put that in there.
No, thank you. We appreciate that. Adina, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something? You can unmute.
I just I get very frustrated with our wasted money going on in Tallahassee, because the way I look at it is we have two options: either lock the border and provide for the people that are here, or allow open borders and provide. Okay, let me put it this way. You can't let people in and then say, but you can't work, you can't get medical care, you can't. I mean, you know, our clinic, because we don't accept Medicaid, has, I would guess, we don't track it because we don't ask documentation status. So we do tend, I'm sure, to get a lot of the immigrant population coming to us for medical care. And we honestly shouldn't need to exist. You know, I don't understand the logic.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to keep you out, but if you get here, you can't work, you can't get housing, you can't, so somebody tell me how that makes any sense to the people in Tallahassee.
A lot of things don't make sense, and I see them happening. Just like we talk about the insurance crisis, we give $3 billion in two different sessions, special sessions. We went to Tallahassee. $3 billion. Guess where the money went? To the insurance industry. None of it went to you to get you some relief. So there are a lot of things that don't make sense to me. I cannot, but my father used to always tell me, common sense is not common to everyone.
Very true.
So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It is 8:02, and this was a very interesting discussion. Otto, thank you so much for the very clear presentation. It
My
was really
pleasure.
good to pick out
And-
those 5 points. It really helped, I think, you know.
Certainly,
And-
I hope so. And if I may, just very quickly,
Yes.
if it's okay, I could drop in the chat. We have resources
Oh,
in
okay.
English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole that are all community facing. There's also frequently asked question. So please take a look at that and distribute as you see necessary. If any other questions, please feel free to reach out on this topic or anything else. And I'll say to Rep. Woodson's comment, her pecking order as a Broward County Public School graduate, proud of it. That's a very good pecking order. I think that's how it goes.
Ah, Okay,
you.
and someone
Somebody-
asked for the contact information for both of you.
And I'm putting it right now. I'm giving you the office, and since it's a very intimate group, I would even give you myself.
Oh, my
Without-
goodness.
Without, you know, hey, I work for the people.
Maybe I'll
So-
stop the recording.
Yeah.
I think I will do that. Stop the recording.